Hi everyone, and welcome to the first episode of this Dr. Tech podcast series. Every quarter, we bring you a new fascinating startup at the forefront of a revolutionary and high-impact technology. We dig deep into what they're doing, how they're doing it, and why they're doing it. Today we welcome Duality Technologies, a New York-based company founded in 2016 by a team of well-renowned cryptographers, widely recognized as one of the true leaders and pioneers of privacy-enhancing technologies. With our guest, Ronen Cohen, VP of Strategy at Duality, we will explore today the captivating world of secure multi-party computation, federated learning, and of course, homomorphic encryption. At a time when data is becoming such an important part of our daily life, it's good to know that someone is working hard to make sure that we can leverage our most important and sensitive information without compromising on privacy, safety, and of course our rights to secrecy. Ronen, welcome. It's good to have you here in Paris today.
Thanks.
How are you?
Great, thank you. Thanks for having me, and thanks for giving me an excuse to come to Paris.
Before we dig into the topic, maybe you could give us a brief overview of who Duality Technology is, who are their founders, what's current focus, and what's the long-term vision for the company.
Sure, yeah, thank you. So Duality, as you said, was founded about 8 years ago. Our founders are world-renowned data scientists and cryptographers, including a Turing Award winner, which is basically like a Nobel Prize in computer science. And what they saw is that organizations were failing to fully leverage all the data that's out there and failing to work together in order to do analytics, to fight things like cancer or fraud or any of these other scourges of the world. And really the major challenges around these organizations coming together and doing that were around privacy and security. And so we have built a company and now a software platform that enables organizations to leverage their most sensitive data and collaborate together on it, basically enabling them to use any data, any model in any regulatory environment to unlock economic value or unlock healthcare value or help fight crime.
I know that you guys are based in New York. You're expanding in the UK and Europe at the moment. How's the prospect for Europe for you guys at the moment?
Europe has a lot of privacy laws for good reason, and those are really good frameworks for organizations within which to work. And they keep us as consumers safe, they keep businesses safe, but at the same time there's this trade-off that everyone is trying to deal with, which is how do I use the data responsibly and securely and privately, but still actually be able to use it, right? Historically it was kind of binary. And with our company and with other privacy technology companies out there, you no longer have to have that trade-off where it's a hard yes or a hard no. There's now an enablement aspect to it.
So, privacy-enhancing technologies, what are they exactly and why are they important?
Privacy-enhancing technologies are basically like tools in a toolbox. Each one is there for a specific privacy or security challenge. And the nice thing about them is, just like tools, they all come together and they work together really nicely. And what they're there for is to enable you to use data securely. It used to be that you could only store data securely or transfer it securely. But when you were using it, you were exposing yourself or exposing data or leaking data that you didn't necessarily want people or other organizations to see. And privacy-enhancing technologies basically protect against that. And privacy-enhancing technologies are actually all around us. If you have an iPhone, you are using privacy-enhancing technologies today. Apple uses it to help you understand where your photos were taken without actually showing Apple the photos or telling them where you were. Google uses it. If you use Google Maps and you Google a location, like a restaurant, a cafe, and it shows you how busy it is at certain times, that's through privacy-enhancing technologies, where they're able to tell you that without actually tracking the individuals. Or if you've ever checked if your password is exposed in a leak or a hack, that's also through privacy-enhancing technologies.
I think there was an example of Apple being able to tell whether an incoming call was spam
Exactly.
without actually checking the number.
Exactly. And so in all these examples, basically you're able to derive an insight from data without seeing the data itself.
Right.
And our angle at Duality is to provide these types of technologies to businesses and to governments, whereas Apple and Google and others are providing it to consumers.
Right. And so there's literally so many potential use cases across a very wide range of industry sectors. Perhaps you could give us like a few examples in healthcare and finance industry. I know I've written as well a couple of years ago about how these technologies could help detect fraud in the insurance sector. There's so much you can do with these. Can you perhaps give us a few examples?
Sure, yeah, I'll give you 3 examples. So the first is in cancer research. So medical data is locked away across different medical centers and across different countries. And I think that people can appreciate how sensitive that data is. And cancer researchers always want to be able to train better models to detect cancer, for example, by using images. And the challenge has historically been that you can't centralize that data in order to do that. A, because of privacy concerns, B, because of feasibility, that data is just really big, and C, because of data sovereignty. And so privacy enhancing technologies allow you to treat that distributed or federated data set as if it's one, to be able to train models on top of it. And so all of a sudden the researcher is able to work with his partners or her partners across different organizations, and we're seeing models that are 300% plus better at detecting true cases of cancer and reducing false positives, which is great. Another example that you brought up yourself is in fraud. A lot of financial institutions, they only have a sliver of the actual transaction activity going around the world. That makes it really hard to fight fraud. And there's a perceived challenge that sharing data across financial institutions is hard to do because of competitive concerns, because of privacy and legal concerns and so on. And so using privacy enhancing technologies, they're now able to do that and to be able to root out fraud and help their bottom line and help us as potential victims. And then a third area that I think is really interesting is in the world of AI. There's a lot of studies now that show that all the good public data is actually running out. Which means that all the good quality data to train and to update AI models is hidden behind corporate and government firewalls. And so there's a potential to unlock significant economic value if you can make that data available for AI, but at the same time, as a corporation, you want to be able to control your data and make sure that you're not leaking or exposing anything that you don't want to. And so that's another example where privacy enhancing technologies come in, where you could utilize your data to update or build new models without actually exposing it.
Yeah, and I guess there must be some interesting application as well in the field of defense. Everybody's talking about how international relationships are changing or evolving at the moment, and certainly encryption is part of that story. Is it something that Duality is involved as well? Are you actually part of that ongoing push for military or defense innovation?
Absolutely. Actually, we were born out of defense innovation first and then went into the private sector. Governments really like privacy enhancing technologies because it allows them to do what they need to do to fight crime, to fight fraud, do public health and improve citizen services in a less intrusive manner to us. In a more privacy conscious manner, while doing things in a way that respects data minimization and data security and accuracy and so on. And so they use it for much of the same use cases that the private sector does. Fight crime, improve services for us, healthcare, and obviously to be able to collaborate for defense and national security purposes as well.
One of those, and there's different types of privacy enhancement technologies. One I find particularly fascinating really is homomorphic encryption. In essence, it's about manipulating and using data without having to decrypt the data in the first place. That's quite interesting, isn't it? And I was wondering whether you could maybe give us an overview of how that particular technology works, how robust it is. I think I've heard it's resistant to potential quantum computing attacks. So what's your take on the homomorphic encryption?
Homomorphic encryption is an incredible technology. It's probably the most powerful privacy enhancing technology that's there, and it's also very counterintuitive because as you said, what it allows you to do is to encrypt data or encrypt models and still use them without ever decrypting. And so once you kind of wrap your head around that, what it allows you to do is to derive an insight from a data set without seeing the data. And as you said, it's incredibly secure. It is what's called post-quantum, and so that means that the new wave of quantum computers that are coming out onto the market are not going to be able to break this type of encryption. And so you're seeing a lot of governments push for the use of what's called post-quantum cryptography out there. Homomorphic encryption goes beyond those types of technologies because they also allow you to protect data in use, not just protect it when you're storing it. And so it's a technology that Duality has really been trailblazing with since the beginning, and there's a number of applications both for homomorphic encryption by itself, but also when you combine it with these other privacy technologies that are out there.
So that's the interesting thing. Actually, you can combine full homomorphic encryption with other types of technologies, such as trusted execution environment or federated learning. Actually, the federated learning is interesting. Where you have models actually moving from place to place as opposed to moving the data, which
Correct.
can be interesting in the context of strong data localization, particularly here in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
How does that work exactly?
Yeah, it's interesting. So federated learning is a great example of a technology that goes well with homomorphic encryption. Because what you could do is you can keep data in place without moving it and train models doing that. Now, often the models that you're training at the end of the day become very sensitive, and so you want to protect those, and maybe when you run that model, you don't want to expose it to others. And so an area where this is used, for example, is in multinational fraud. So you have multinational banks, for example, we're sitting in one now, that it's very difficult for them even internally to be able to see their entire data holdings and make sense of it. And so you also have regulators that have said that when you fully homomorphically encrypt data, it's no longer personally identifiable information, and so you can process it in different countries. And so what that means is that you can all of a sudden combine federated learning with fully homomorphic encryption to build new models that actually take advantage of your entire data estate versus just the piecemeal approach that has existed up until today.
This technology, when we first spoke maybe 2-3 years ago, the main problem with it was maybe it was not as fast in terms of processing as other encryption technologies, so maybe not for real-time applications. How has this evolved?
When homomorphic encryption was first discovered, 15 plus years ago, it took hours to just do an addition between two numbers. We consider that to be a solved problem now. We're doing tens of thousands of computations in seconds. We're able to work with unstructured data like video and audio and huge data sets, nation-state level data sets, and even support complex AI models. And so basically Duality, every year we're basically improving by an order of magnitude. Just a couple of years ago was 1 million X speed up alone. So
Right.
It's a solved problem from our
Well,
perspective.
very good to hear. And how do you work actually with your clients to implement these kind of technologies? I mean, surely there must be some kind of data framework preparation, harmonization, especially when you work across industry, like for the entire insurance industry, for instance. Do you work with the regulators directly? What's the approach?
We take two approaches. One is a technical approach in terms of what our product does, and the other is a regulatory approach. So from a technical perspective, we've built a platform that basically has 3 layers to it. There's the privacy enhancing technologies, there's data science and analytics that work in a privacy protected way, and there's what we call collaboration management, or a governance layer on top of it, which defines who can do what, who can see what, who can get what results, and so on and so forth. And that's what helps you put the right guardrails around the collaboration. The other thing that we do is we work with regulators, and we help them understand how privacy technologies fit into their laws, but we also help them understand what the industry challenges are around the use of data and how the industry would like to use privacy technologies. And so we have some unique regulatory credentials as a result. But for anyone listening or watching this podcast, there's a few regulators that do a really great job at releasing content around privacy technology. There's the Information Commissioner's Office, or ICO, in the UK, IMDA in Singapore, and even non-government organizations like the Center for Information Policy Leadership. They all have really great content that helps you understand what privacy technologies are out there, how to use them, when to avoid them, and so on. So there's a lot of content there.
What's the regulators' reaction to these technologies? Surely they must love it.
They're very positive about it. I think that they're always, regulators want to be able to say yes. They don't want to be able to say no. And so they like working with industry to find a way that will satisfy regulatory and legal requirements and also get the outcomes that everyone wants. And what you're actually seeing more and more now is that privacy-enhancing technologies are actually being written into legislation and basically explaining, in these certain cases, they either should be used or they could be used. So that's a trend that's really happening across Europe and the world.
And maybe as the last question for you, where's the sector, where's the privacy-enhancing technology sector going in the next few years? What's the next stage of development? One thing that I find interesting is that you mentioned some big tech companies, they are coming to this technology now, but how come they haven't really developed this in a big way, and that most of the development has been taken care of by a small ecosystem of startups like you guys? What's your take on this, and where do you see the industry involving going forward?
There's a few questions that you asked in there. I think maybe I'll answer where is it going first. We can't have this conversation without talking about generative AI today. And what you're seeing is organizations are mandating that their employees use these large language models that are out there. But at the same time, they're telling them, well, don't ask this question or don't run it against this data, and because of privacy concerns, and they don't want to leak that information. And so we're seeing a huge appetite and demand for technologies that can help organizations fully utilize these large language models that are out there on their own data, or to build their own in a way that respects privacy and also business confidentiality. And that also links back to that earlier point that I made, that all this good data that's publicly out there is running out. So organizations understand that they need to utilize not only their own data, but that of their partners and their ecosystem to get insights. And so that's definitely, I think, the direction of travel for both privacy technologies and AI together. I think another interesting area to think about, and I know that you have investors watching this as well, is looking at the full stack. What you're actually also seeing now is organizations creating hardware to support privacy-enhancing technologies and basically support more complex types of computations. And so you see a whole new industry forming around this bet that these solution providers or application providers like us will drive these workloads that will require potentially more advanced hardware. And then you have the distribution models, which is through the cloud providers, where the workloads are going. So it's this really nice self-fulfilling prophecy there, where you could do more sensitive computations, move those to the cloud, and obviously get the benefits of doing that from operational CapEx expenditures and so on and so forth. Your second question, I think, was around why there's a startup ecosystem around this. Making privacy-enhancing technologies work and doing data science on them is complex. There's a reason why most organizations go and they buy a computer with Windows already on it rather than building their own operating system. And that's basically what Duality is providing, right? Rather than you having to go and buy the chips and buy the hardware and buy the people to create this operating system, we give that to you. And I think that's the approach that other privacy technology companies are taking as well.
Thank you very much, Ronan, for this super interesting insight into the world of privacy-enhancing technology. It's been very fascinating, and I certainly think that we're not talking enough about privacy-enhancing technology in general, given how relevant all these use cases typically are across a very wide range of sectors. I'm sure we'll be hearing a lot more about Duality in the coming months and years. We'll certainly keep you guys on the radar. Meanwhile, that's it from us, and we'll see you next time on the next episode of Dr. Tech.